Hey everybody, and we are live today. This lunchtime for me, morning for Shana, with Shana Conjurski.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had to work on it. Obviously, I used my Philly accent and it did not work well the first time, but thankfully Shana worked me through it. So thank you for joining us today, Shana.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
And I'm excited about this one because we're going to go over a day at work as a principal in consulting. So Shana works for Atlas Executive Consulting, correct?
Yes.
So what is, I got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
What is Atlas?
So Atlas is a, small veteran, disabled veteran-owned business based out of San Diego. We have locations in Charleston and Hampton Roads area as well. And we essentially offer consulting in the capabilities of analytics, financial audit, and program support.
Okay. So when you say small, I don't think many service members realize what small means. I think you said, how big are you about?
About 170-ish employees, give or take every few weeks or months or whatever it may be. But in comparison, like companies like, IBM or Deloitte or GDIT, they're operating at the 350,000, 400,000.
Or EY.
Or EY. Sorry, I thought you'd plug that.
I'm not there anymore, but once EY, always EY. So. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. So, and yeah, you're right. 300,000 plus. It's a big difference. And so Atlas does, consulting in the public sector. So government, federal government, state, local government agencies, and you're a principal. So what is a principal?
So essentially, a principal in Atlas Executive Consulting, I manage a portfolio of projects. So I'm a project manager specifically for one project, and then manage, other project managers and employees across a variety of projects in that market, which for me is science and technology.
Which is really exciting because you went from Navy electrician, right?
Yes.
To running basically a science and technology portfolio.
Yes.
Okay. That's quite the leap.
Yeah. So it was a big leap. And actually, my journey to get there is even funnier. So, so when I was transitioning out of the Navy as an E7, I knew that I wanted to work in the field of instructional design. So developing training content, delivering training content, that was my passion. So when I transitioned out, that was the type of work that I was looking for. And I discovered really quickly that I didn't know anything whatsoever about, what the civilian sector was using to kind of do that, be instructional designers and develop curriculum and manage learning management systems. So I was lucky enough to get a job with IBM, and very, very lucky to get a job with IBM working on a DoD project developing training. And from there, it kind of took me into the more technical aspect of, projects. So when you're, building this solution for an entity, there's a lot of technology involved. You're working with developers and you're coding and you're building platforms. And everything you do as a trainer kind of relates to what they're developing and distributing to the client. So, I kind of transitioned during my time at IBM from saying, okay, I want to be an instructional designer to being, I want to be a project manager on an IT project now.
So a couple thoughts here. Number one, until I ran into IBM at EY and heard about the stuff like from you that IBM does, I thought all IBM did was make computers. And I know they don't even do that anymore, but that's dating myself. But like when I think of IBM, I think of like manufacturing, computers, chips, stuff like that. I don't think about consulting. And they do a lot of it, right?
Absolutely. A ton in a lot of different areas too. Right. So, and I think a lot of companies are similar, right? You're going to have your commercial sector where, the consultants are solely focused on, developing and delivering in the commercial sphere. And then you have your public sector, which is, focused on, the DoD, government, health and human services, whatever it might be. And a lot of that is programmatic. And then a lot of it is, partnering with other companies to deliver a solution that they manage. So, I think right now IBM's big push is cloud. So I always like
everybody. So
yeah, right. So I always like to follow from a tech perspective what they have going on there. But yeah, no, it's not about making computers anymore. They're high into the consulting sphere.
So you wanted to get, if I hear this right, you basically thought training meant you were going to be, you loved training in the Navy.
Yeah.
So you said, well, I'll just design training in the private sector. Lucked into a job at IBM and then realized, holy crap, like there's so much more to this. You enjoyed it, but then you saw an opportunity to take it from there into the IT project management realm, which led you to Atlas.
Yes. Well, and I mean, I think I'm like most people where like I really enjoy learning, right? And so, when I started working for IBM, it just opened this entire new world of there is so much cool stuff going on out there, right? And I loved listening to your conversation with Gary, because let's talk about HR. You're trying to get into the HR field. Well, what do you know about the products, right? Do you know SAP? Do you know Workday? If you're a logistics person, what do you know about blockchain? Like how are these industries, what tools are they utilizing and what's the hot topic? And I didn't realize any of that when I was transitioning out. So once I got to IBM and started seeing all these different aspects, it piqued my interest. And then it also, kind of encouraged me to reach out back to the veteran community and be like, hey guys, there's all this stuff that you don't know that's really going to help you find a job if you start looking into it now.
And I think that we have some of the foundational knowledge. Like I always said, I could do project management because I was planning 1,000-person operations on a whiteboard with PowerPoint slides, and we would grind through the whole thing, step by step by step. But oh my God, how much easier would it have been if I understood project, and I knew how to plan all of that out there with the timelines and schedules and got everybody involved. And I think you just hit on the same thing. Like you've got to speak the language of the field you want to go into. You've got to know the tools, you've got to know the key technology and everything else like that to be able to make that transition. So with you I think this is perfect for what question we have here. You didn't know that stuff. You were an electrician in the Navy. How did you get into IBM? Did you just apply online?
I did. So
darn it, threw that out of the.
And I thought I was one of those people that was like incredibly prepared, right? And it wasn't until I started actually actively looking for a job that I realized I was not. So I was all over Indeed. I was all over LinkedIn, and I just took a resume that I would keep, updating as I got those rejections, and just happened across this training position that I ended up getting hired for. But really, I'm going to be honest and say it was absolute pure luck. I think that my military background, was helpful in the sense that, the soft skills and the discipline that you have, or that you gain from being a military member is of value. But the position that I was filling didn't need any super technical support. I mean, we were using PowerPoints, and PDFs and stuff like that. So, lucky.
Yeah.
In that sense.
And it got your foot in the door, and that once you get your foot in the door, you can grow and you can demonstrate your value to the organization.
Yes.
So let's go back to your day as a principal. Before we get into that, we had you ready for this question? I want to be a management consultant. What is that like when somebody says that? What do you say? Like, because I know we get that, and I'm getting so excited. I'm sitting back in my chair.
Yes. So So in what? Like, it's like I mentioned earlier, that's kind of that single question alone, I think, really indicates that you don't know anything about consulting because there's so many different types. Like I mentioned, Atlas Executive Consulting provides a lot of different consultants in a lot of different fields. So do you want to be a consultant in financials? Do you want to be a more technical consultant in working DevSecOps? Do you want to manage project teams through agile development? Like all of those different things kind of determine where your niche is, right? And what you want to get into. And then I would also argue that, it needs to be something that you're passionate about because consulting is a very thankless job. It's like you give, right? You're giving. And whether that's to your clients, to your company, to your employees, it's a lot harder, I think, to find the metric of success. So you have to keep that in mind too, when you start looking into consulting.
And I think that's a great point. You're constantly having to work to make sure the client's happy, which is normal across any industry. But a lot of times, like there's a term when that contract ends and you've got to win it again. You've got to always look to win new business, right? Build new relationships. You have all kinds of metrics of success for revenue, utilization, and everything else. You've got to manage and grow your team. I mean, there's a lot involved, right? Especially at your level. So, I guess let's talk about that. So as a principal in charge of a portfolio, how do they evaluate success for you? Like, what does success look like? Do you have certain goals? Do you have like utilization metrics and stuff like that? Revenue? You don't have to talk about specifics, obviously.
Yeah. So I mean, we have goals, right? But it's so funny, and one of the reasons I think I saw a question about why did I transition from IBM into Atlas Executive Consulting, and really it's the culture and this company and this organization, and our CEO and founder Paul Kitchen, he highlights our motto is, our mission is your success. And that is really the metric by which, we are evaluated as employees. And that's not just, to our clients. Obviously, we want them to be successful, but it's also to your employees, to your managers. Like, how successful are your clients? How successful are your employees? How successful are your managers? And that tells us how successful you are. And then it's also important to remember that's not from my perspective, right? It's from their perspective. So the client's perspective of success is that measurement, right?
Right. No, absolutely. And then, so I think you hit on an important part that not enough people realize: the difference between working for a major corporation and a small business. I've done both as well, and it's a huge difference. Both have their pluses and minuses. Can you talk to that? Like the difference between being at a huge like IBM, and then the difference between being like how that compares to being at a small business with like 200 or less employees.
Sure. So, I would compare, working for a large organization like IBM or EY to being in your branch of service, right? So let's say you're in the Navy, like I was in the Navy, that population is 400,000 plus. And when you start including, everyone else, it gets larger. How connected are you in that organization, right? I mean, you're not calling the CNO on a daily basis and saying, hey, bro, what's up? So it's kind of the same in that kind of culture, right? Or that larger organization. You're not connected to a vast majority of the people in that company. Whereas working for a company like Atlas, now we're talking division level, right? Where you see and interact with your leadership and your employees on a daily basis. You're better able to get a pulse of what's going on. And then it has that more familial feeling, right? Where you can really be collaborative and you can work together as a team and embrace each other with the goal of, success of the company, of the clients, of our employees. So for me, that's the culture that I enjoy. And that's one of the reasons that I, transitioned to Atlas, was because they have this culture that's very supportive and more familial than, a larger organization.
And I would share, like, from my perspective, being in a small business first, if, as a veteran, we bring a diverse set of skills, right? Mm-hmm. So you bring skills on like the whole range of HR, supply, like everything, right? And so when I went to the small business, I worked at First ProSphere, like if I saw an opportunity to improve the company, like I could walk down the hall or call somebody up or make a recommendation to, the president, the CEO or whomever, and be like, hey, we could do this better, or I saw this and I'd like to help. And they could just make a decision like that. So you could kind of roll up your sleeves and make an impact across the higher thing. I could jump in and help write proposals.
Yeah.
Learn about proposals. I had no idea about that coming out of the Army. I could sit in on pricing meetings. I could go to different engagements or say, hey, I want to join you on this, go on this convention. And it was easy because there was like you said, access, the familiar type thing. I could just go literally walk down the hall to the CEO on some occasions. And with EY, there was so much more resources, but because it was so large, there was also more red tape. There was more, it was like being in the service, like you'd have to go up 2 to 3 levels and check with different people. And really, whereas, EY, they wanted to grow me, but like I was like my primary focus are like, hey, we didn't bring you on to do like EY global communications or veteran hiring. We brought you on to do this first, and all that other stuff is nice. But like, you're here to be a senior manager in our government public sector and to grow this account and manage,
Yeah.
And that was a change for me. And I think like I would not have been successful at EY even remotely had I not had the small business success. So sorry, this is your interview. But
no, it's great. It's great because I can totally empathize with that too, right? And being at Atlas is like coming back to my roots, right? We support the Navy, which is something that is very near and dear to my heart. 20 plus years of service, and then I want to give back and still be in that realm. And you're not able, to your point, to really affect that kind of change in direction in a larger organization. Whereas, within a company like Atlas, like you could be a junior analyst and have the opportunity to provide feedback that could, help us pivot into a different market, or can help us better deliver for our clients, and can help us grow as a company. So I think having the ability to be influential as a very junior person is very empowering. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I think it's important for a lot of transitioning service members and military spouses to really focus on networking, not just aim for those big companies, because there could be an incredible role out there at a company like Atlas that they didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
But they talk to somebody like you and you're like, hey, well, we've got this growing or we've got this. And they start to realize that you go for that allure of that brand name. But like sometimes that community bank, instead of like the major bank, the community bank may have better service, may have a better feel, better rates, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in small businesses that we really don't consider because we don't know any better.
Well, and it's more challenging too, because when you start looking at small businesses, they're not advertising in the same type of way, right? So they're not plastered all over, your televisions and commercials, right? So the bulk of our stuff, I think we have a LinkedIn page. We also have Twitter, Facebook, Insta. But who's seeing it if you don't know it's there, right? So in that sense, I think, yes, networking becomes incredibly important. Like you say all the time, right? Because those opportunities are out there and you're not necessarily going to find them searching a job post or, going on Indeed or even looking, in the job section at LinkedIn, right? Your community is going to help you the most.
Did you know Atlas existed when you were transitioning?
I had no idea.
Right? I didn't know ProSphere existed until somebody introduced me to the CEO. and they had about 200 people at the time. Same thing. So decent sized company. And like, we don't know what we don't know. So, all right, so we've got 10 more minutes and we just haven't, the conversation has been so much fun. We haven't gotten into your day. So, what's your day like?
So oddly enough, it's going to sound kind of cliche, but my day is networking. And I think from the perspective, like, let's take a look at what that word actually means, right? It's interacting with other people, right? Mm-hmm. So I do that with my clients on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. I have calls that I have to attend. We do daily stand-ups. I'm constantly reaching out to see, doing some needs analysis and having those discussions and making sure that we're being supportive and providing them, every service that they need. And then it's also reaching out to my employees. So, I have a stand up every day with employees, and then I talk to my managers, when we have the opportunity to sync to make sure, everybody's on the same page and we all know what's going on. And then we have proposal work, like you said, business development activities. And so really my day is like one long phone call
or Zoom session or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So are you, I know we talk to people about metrics when it comes to consulting world. So are you billable? Like, are you actually, you're billing, because you said you're a PM on one thing. So how many hours a week approximately are you billable on one or more contracts? And for everybody out there, can you explain what that means? Let's let you explain it.
Sure. So, in the consulting industry, and especially on, the public sector contracts, your paycheck comes from your accounts, right? So when I manage a project, I have, let's say, 5 employees that are on that project, and their salary is directly funded through that contract work. So it becomes challenging and important to manage your financials very carefully, because if you bring on too many resources, you run out of money, right? If you don't bring on enough resources, then you have too much money left over. So yes, I am billable across my portfolio.
Okay, great.
Primarily to the project that I specifically manage.
Right.
And then, the time that I spend working with the other managers and employees and having client calls for the other projects, that I become billable then.
Right. No, that's so as a SME, almost like in some cases.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and I think that's important for people to understand when entering the consulting world, is like the difference between being billable and being a cost center.
Yeah.
And not so, when you're billable, that means like that portion of your salary is, covered for the company. So the company actually makes money off of the overhead, basically. The fringe, your wrap rates. I don't know if you did that on this, but like you bill the government this much per hour for each employee, and in that rate is the salary for the individual, benefits, insurance, and then the money for the company to actually run the company. So the actual overhead, so HR, building, So for people to understand that, so when you get to the PM level, you've got to manage all of that.
Yes.
And when you're in contract, salary negotiations and all that, like that all factors what you can afford based on what people bid and everything else like that. And then a cost center is like, you're not billing. So it could be HR, it could be recruiting, it could be analysts, whatever. Proposal writers, like those people are not making money for the company unless they win.
Yes.
Business development people, stuff like that. So you're billable. Can you tell me approximately how many hours a week, a range that you're, actively engaged in project work?
So I would say 40 to 50.
So you're not kidding. Like, are you sure you're not in the Big Four? Like,
no, well, and to be honest with you, like, I'm loving like this draw on my time. When I was with IBM, I was higher than 50 a week. I worked a lot more hours, and had a lot more contact time, and I had to travel. So no, 40 to 50 is actually a pretty good sweet spot for me.
So
excited.
So 40 to 50 hours. So full-time, across projects, actively working for clients. And then you said there's other work. How many hours a week do you spend on other work? Like proposals, admin.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just proposals, admin meetings, whatever other stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, again, I love about this company is there's not a lot of like admin time, right? Most of the efforts or most of the time that I'm spending is really directly related to, one of the projects that we're supporting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, BD work is as it comes, right? So, if we have solicitations that we're interested in,
mm-hmm.
those are quite time intensive. If you've never worked on a proposal, it's a lot. So, I mean, all that is kind of just dependent upon what we have going on at the time and the level of the solicitation, right? Are we somewhat interested? Are we really interested? Mm-hmm. And how much do we want to dig into that? So, if you have a turnaround time on a solicitation that's 30 days, I'd plan on probably pushing at least 5-6 hours a day into proposal work.
Right.
Shorter turnaround times, like I've worked on some that, the turnaround time was 8 days. You're not sleeping.
And do you have a team that you get your team involved, of course. Do you have proposal writers that help or technical writers? And
yeah, we pull from our SMEs. So, the other principals within the company and obviously, our executive leadership is heavily involved in our proposal process as well. We have an individual who manages, the pipeline, and then we work into the process, the pink teams and red teams and blue teams and whatever teams you got, right? So, I mean, for us, it's pretty much an all hands on deck.
And I think people need to realize also, I'm so excited for this conversation, but like, you can't just decide, hey, I want to go after something, right? You have to actually like get it cleared by your leadership because there's a large investment in time, money, effort to actually put together a proposal, right?
Yeah. And that's something that we discuss, from a leadership perspective. Like, I'm not going to go out and see a solicitation, on sam.gov or whatever it is you're looking at and say, we're going to do that. We find areas that we think we might have opportunity in, and we kind of look for, solicitations that might be upcoming, and we source those to the larger group. So there's no unilateral decisions for the most part on what it is that we're going to work on. Obviously recompetes, that's a given for the most part, but other than that, it's a team effort.
And then Jose's got a question about, it looks like he's asking if at the principal level, do you have revenue goals for annual revenue goals typically?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily revenue goals, but I mean, I do have specific goals, regarding business development, employee management, sourcing of opportunities, recruiting, hiring. And we have specific metrics, right, regarding how we want that to happen. And I wouldn't say that that's necessarily singular to the principal role, right? I mean, as a consultant, and if you're a senior consultant, that is my expectation of you. What type of business development are you doing? How are you reaching out to the clients and seeing where opportunity is for us to kind of expand our footprint? So, if we're looking for specifics, not necessarily, but as a consultant, always.
Yeah. No, I tell people if you're going to be anything manager or higher, you really need to start focus on how you're going to drive new business, how you're going to grow business. You got to be engaged with the client. You've got to see new opportunities. And if you're on a project speaking to the client and they say, oh, I wonder if we could do this, or I need help with this or whatever, that could be an opportunity to grow. And unless you're keeping an eye open for that and have the relationships and the knowledge of the BD process, it's hard. So that's a great point. So we've got another minute. So we really don't, but I want to ask it anyway. Rich had a question. I want to end on a high note. Rich, You're killing me. What skills should a soon-to-be transitioning service member look into to make themselves marketable as a consultant?
Okay, so Rich, what do you want to do? Right? Are you interested in the tech world? Right? If you are, what part? But I would say you really need to be aware of what's going on in the industry, right? So like I said, if you're interested in DevSecOps, what's the market? What qualifications or certifications are they looking for? Who's using it where? Why? If you're looking into a project management type consulting, what do you know about financials? How savvy are you with project? Are you pursuing your certification in PMP? Because I think really the biggest problem I see coming from transitioning veterans, and I think you've mentioned this several times before, is that you take this 20 years of experience or plus, right? And you say, I have the skills. I can do this. Like for us, it's I was a chief. I can do this. But you don't have the skills. You have the soft skills, but you don't necessarily have the industry level knowledge that's going to make you competitive. So find what it is that you really want to do and learn everything you possibly can about what's going on in that industry.
And I would, if you're not sure what that is, how it worked for me was I actually got coffee with a partner at EY, and I spent 30 minutes with her. She walked me down to another partner. I spent 45 minutes with her. And I was actually going and talking about recruiting, talent acquisition. And I walked out saying, man, I want to be a consultant in people advisory services, like human capital. And I didn't even know what the service lines were, the sectors or anything else like that meant. So I would say if you want to go into consulting, start reaching out to people like Shana and ask for a phone call, do some research on the company, do some research in consulting, come prepared. But I think you could start talking to different consultants and figure that out. That way they'll help you shape it if you come prepared. So,
absolutely.
All right. Any last words, any last advice? Can people reach out to you? All of that.
No, absolutely. Please do. If you have any questions or you want to network, please. I always try to make time to still keep in touch with, everyone that I connect with on LinkedIn. So, if you have questions and you want some insight, please feel free.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your morning. I really appreciate the interview. I actually want to talk again sometime, and
Sure.
Hopefully we could do this again and dive in a little more, maybe get a couple other consultants on so we could all talk about small versus big and all that other stuff. But have a great day. Have a great weekend, and please stay safe.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Talk to you later.